Hands up who wants a good and happy life. Well, tentatively we would all put our hands up to that. Last week we started a series looking at Jacob, where 4,000 years ago God's people are not millions, then it's one solitary family. God has set apart this family to do amazing things through them and their descendants, to live in the fullest sense of that word, to be happy in the fullest sense of that word, to be blessed. 3 questions, you can see them there. Who wants the blessing? Who deserves the blessing? Who gets the blessing? Very quick recap. Abraham was a nobody from nowhere. And back in Genesis 12, God broke into his life. 3 promises of blessing. Abraham, I will give you countless descendants. I will give you a land to live in. And so in turn, thirdly, you guys will be an extraordinary blessing to the whole world. Who wants this blessing? Who deserves it? Who gets it? Abraham has a son, Isaac, who has twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau is a brute of a man. Jacob is a manipulative weasel. If you had a daughter, one look at their Facebook pages would cause you to conclude that neither were son-in-law material. Esau, the firstborn, had by the right of his birth an entitlement to the lion's share of the family estate come the day when Dad dropped off his perch. That was his birthright. But it wasn't just the money, it was the responsibility to lead the family, lead God's family. Esau could not give a monkey's about his birthright. And so it was easy for Jacob to swindle it out of him. That was last week. And by now the family had become very rich. Isaac has become very old, and he reaches the point where he wants to put his affairs in order. Genesis chapter 27 verse 1, when Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for his elder son Esau and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." The blessing at that time, in that culture, when someone knew they were about to die, there would be a big family celebration. This wasn't the celebration after the funeral, this was the celebration before the funeral, which maybe makes more sense. And Dad would give his blessing. His desire for the family, for the future. But a bit more than his desire, because this blessing was formal, it was authoritative. Hands up who wants the blessing, who wants to be the one that leads the family, who will carry forward Dad's legacy. Esau was the elder son, Esau was the firstborn, Esau would have put his hand up. But what do we know about Esau already? He has already traded his birthright away, unbelievably, for a plate of red lentil stew. Why would you? The word red in Hebrew is Edom, and forever his nickname would be Edom. His descendants would be known as Edomites, because Esau gave it all up for a plate of red stew. Those verses at the end of chapter 26, they seem slightly odd, don't they? Why are they here? Verse 34, chapter 26, when Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and also Basmath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. But this is merely indicative of Esau's relationship with God. You will notice throughout the Bible God commanding his people to marry within the family of God. He continues that command in 2017. Esau marrying someone who loves and worships something else, that is bound to result in tensions. Esau having 2 wives, that's not good either. Esau just has no concern with God's good and wise ways. Who wants the blessing? Well, there's Esau. Let's look at each of the other characters. There's Dad, Isaac. We read this story and at virtually every detail we say, what? This big family occasion, but Isaac just invites his son Esau. He doesn't even tell his wife Rebekah. She learns about it because she's listening through the keyhole. Dad says, Esau, I want to give you the blessing. Go hunting for me, get me some nice food. And when you come back, did I forget to mention, bring me some nice food. Back last week, we learnt that Esau was Isaac's favourite son because he hunted the sort of food that Dad liked. Maybe later you could do a count. I did this very briefly. Might have got my numbers wrong. I reckoned in chapter 27, there are at least 13 references to game and tasty food. And then we remember that Esau traded his birthright for a plate of food. God's purposes are at stake here, and both Dad and son are just interested in their own physical appetites. But crucially, prior to the twins' birth, God himself had revealed to Isaac that his choice of the family leader was Jacob. And Isaac totally disregarded this. Esau, Isaac, Rebekah. I heard an expression this week I'd never heard before. I don't know if you've heard it. Tiger mums. Have you heard about tiger mums? Mums who are ultra pushy with their children. You know, teaching their children to count to 100 in French by the age they're 1. You know, grade 8 on the piano by the age 7.5. Playing cricket for the county. Only educational toys in their house. Who wants the blessing? Well, tiger mum Rebekah shoots her hand up in the air for darling son Jacob. She overhears that Isaac is planning on giving the blessing to Esau. She quickly grabs Jacob and she says, you get there first. Your dad's blind, so put goat skin on your arms so you seem as hairy as your brother. I'll knock up some goat stew. You go in there and get the blessing. What sort of family is this? It's manipulative. It's deceitful. And Jacob, Mum says to him, this is how we are going to dupe your dad and grab the blessing. And verse 11, how does Jacob respond? Verse 11, Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man while I've got smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him. You don't say. I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. How does Jacob not respond? Well, he does not respond by saying, Mum, no. This is wrong. He's my dad. He's your husband. Esau's my brother. And we're God's people. God has already said that he's going to use me in an amazing way. We need to trust him. Does Jacob respond in that way? No, Jacob's concern is not that this is wrong and untrusting and plain vile. Jacob's concern is that he might get caught. Rebecca convinces him. Jacob says, okay, my hand's up, I'll go for the blessing. My first heading, who wants the blessing? Secondly, who deserves the blessing? Aren't we amazed that this works? Jacob pretends to be Esau, but he can't disguise his voice, so Isaac is at once suspicious. He comes back very quickly, so Isaac is again suspicious. Jacob puts goat skin on him, so he feels hairy like Esau, and Isaac doesn't notice. Isaac loves venison and has been looking forward to it. Jacob serves up goat, and he doesn't notice. For so many reasons, this plan ought to fail. And additionally, wouldn't you have thought that God would have intervened? Wouldn't you have thought that God would have thwarted Jacob's deplorable behaviour? But Isaac is conned. God does not intervene, and Jacob gets the blessing. Verse 27, so he went to his father Isaac and kissed him. We've seen someone else kissing someone in betrayal, haven't we? When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field. I'm not sure that's entirely complimentary, actually, never mind. May God give you heaven's dew and the earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. Jacob goes, Esau returns, and the reality of what has happened hits Isaac like a sledgehammer. Verse 31, Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. How does Esau respond? He wails, he weeps, and then rather more darkly, that last verse that Lisa read, verse 41, Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of my mourning, of mourning for my father are near. I'm going to wait for the funeral. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. And then you can read on into the next chapter. The incident at the start of this chapter, I pointed this out, starts off with Esau and his sexual immorality. Actually, if you read on, what does Esau do next after the end of this story? Well, he goes and finds himself another girl. I'm not yet wanting to come to my heading, who gets the blessing? I'm still wanting to ask, who deserves the blessing? Does this family deserve God's blessing? Isaac, who is so ruled by his physical appetite, who allows himself to be duped by the most unsophisticated of cons, who willfully disregards God. Rebecca, the shameful tiger mum, who deserves the blessing? Esau, who sold his birthright. Esau, who couldn't care less about God's ways. Esau, who marries outside of God's family multiple times. Esau, who deep down is a murderer. Or Jacob the liar. Jacob the, I will even con my elderly blind father. Jacob the, I do not trust God to do what he said he will. Who deserves the blessing? No one deserves the blessing. My third heading, who gets the blessing? Well, Jacob gets the blessing just as God had promised. And don't we just feel slightly uneasy about this? God determines to give Jacob the blessing, and we think, why does he take it off Esau the firstborn? Why does he want Jacob to have it when it seems to us that he's no better than Esau? Why does God continue with this plan when Jacob gets it in the most outrageous way? I hope you don't think I'm questioning God's wisdom here. But Jacob shouldn't have got the blessing, should he? It's scandalous that Jacob got the blessing. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about us and these two men. You know, in many stories that we read, there is the character we're supposed to identify with. There's the hero. James Bond, right from the start, we know that Bond is the hero, and very soon indeed we have a good idea who the baddie is. The Bible readers have made it quite clear to us, so far as Esau is concerned. The Bible writers say to us explicitly, do not be like Esau. He is the baddie. He is godless. And so we think to ourselves, okay, so am I supposed to be like Jacob? After all, if Jacob gets the blessing, then he must be the hero. There must be something good there that I haven't spotted. But what sort of person is Jacob? Who would even be willing to tell a lie if he thought he wouldn't be found out? Who would do that? Well, what sort of person is it that God makes a promise before he's born? What sort of person is it that 40 years later isn't still counting on that promise? What sort of person is swayed by someone close to them? What sort of person gives in to peer pressure? What sort of person is it who would ever be tempted to be a little underhand in order to get a good and happy life? What sort of person is that? What sort of person is that? Well, some of you will have got there already. What sort of person is like that? I'm the sort of person who's like that. Genesis chapter 25, I am told, don't be like Esau. But Genesis chapter 28, I'm not told, be like Jacob. I'm not told that because it slowly dawns on me that actually I am already like Jacob. And here lies the glory of this chapter. Earlier I was thinking, what sort of God would bless someone like Jacob? It would be a scandalous God who blessed someone like Jacob. But now that I see that I am like Jacob, is it not the best news in the world that there is a God who does something as scandalous as bless someone like Jacob? Bless someone like me. Can I just take us back to 27 and verse 12? Very odd verse. I did read it. I didn't comment. A very odd verse, I think. Jacob says to his mum, what if I get caught? I'd be bringing down a curse on myself, not a blessing. And then tiger mum Rebecca says, verse 12, my son, let the curse fall on me. Now, in one sense, that is a nonsense thing for her to say, isn't it? I'll take the blame. I'll take the penalty for your wrongdoing. Rebekah could not pay for Jacob's wrongdoing, Jacob's sin. Rebekah could not take the punishment that Jacob deserved. That is what Jacob needed, though. That is what all Jacobs need. And if I am in any measure like Jacob, then I need someone to take the curse I deserve. I need someone to give me the blessing I don't deserve. In ancient days, who gets the blessing? Well, in ancient days, the firstborn gets the blessing. But Esau didn't want the responsibility that brought. He couldn't care less. He lost the blessing, and Jacob didn't deserve the blessing. But 2,000 years later, just listen to what Luke says of the Virgin Mary. She gave birth to her firstborn. All the blessings of God rightly belong to Jesus, but on the cross there is that swap we often talk about. The curse I deserve is taken by Jesus, and the blessings of the firstborn are passed to me. And if you look it up later, there's a little verse in Hebrews which describes the church as the gathering of firstborns. It is scandalous that God decided to bless Jacob. It is scandalous that God chooses to bless me by adopting me into his family. And if he has chosen to adopt you, maybe you realise that is scandalous too. With some nervousness, really, I need to tell you a story, but I need to tell you the story in a way that doesn't break a confidence. And so you need to believe me when I tell you this story is based on reality. I want you to know about the person who lives quite close to you, who maybe does prostitution in order to feed her crack habit. And you can imagine the chaos of their life, the chaos of her young children's life. They're desperate, they are addicted, their life is out of control, and boy do they know it. And here's the question, why would they ever come to Hanford Church? Why would they ever come to Hanford Church when they think that we, with our outwardly sorted lives, would look down on them? Why would they do that? Imagine, will you, someone tells you about their life and tears fill your eyes, and they see those tears and they say to you, I knew you'd think I was the worst person ever. And you say, no, I'm crying with you. And I know the person who can change everything for you. Now, why would you react like that? You would react like that because inside you would be thinking, if God scandalously chose to bless Jacob, even worse, if God scandalously chose to bless me, it is entirely within his nature to bless someone like you. I'm putting up a poster outside church in a few weeks' time. I'm giving you a preview this morning. It's up by the communion table. We're all 50 shades of mucked up. Come and find true love, true cleansing, true meaning, true blessing. I would understand if no one wants to come to a communion table with that in front of you. But as we will see over the coming weeks in Genesis, that was Jacob's experience. But many of us will also say, that is my experience. And many of us will also say, we long for that to be the experience of many in our families, many in our friendship circles, and many who we at the moment can't conceive of being friends with. Who wants the blessing? Happiness in God, happiness in the best possible life for eternity. Who deserves the blessing? Well, not me. But who gives the blessing? I beg your pardon, who gets the blessing? Who gets the blessing? Jacob gives us the answer to that question.